This is Bob Tribe interviewing our first guest in almost a year and a half since the library has been closed. And today, Brian Holcomb is our guest. He was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, 1970 and 71. And Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome home.
Thank you very much.
Happy to have you here.
Thank you.
I've been looking for a pilot for a long time.
I are one.
Well, let's start with the beginning. You were born in Oregon, right?
My dad was a World War II veteran, also a POW for a year, was a B-17 radio man, came back and attended Oregon State College, and while he was there, he graduated in 1950. My sister and I were born in Corvallis. And then we moved down to a little town in Oregon called Florence, which is on the coast.
I've stayed there.
And after about 3 years and a couple of stints in the hospital because of pneumonia, they discovered that I have a real bad asthmatic condition. So I was instructed by the doctors to move to a drier climate.
Okay.
They wanted Arizona, but my mom had relatives in the Bay Area, Alameda to be exact. So we moved there when I was a young kid, right around 5 years old. And then my dad got a job in Davis, California. So we moved to Davis, stayed there for a couple of years, went to elementary school, and then moved in the 6th grade to Sacramento, where my dad became an insurance agent for State Farm Insurance.
Okay, and that was in 1959?
1959.
Okay. So what schools did you go to here in Sacramento?
I went to Bidwell Elementary School.
Does that still exist?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And then Gady was not completed, so I went to, at that time it was Joaquin Miller. Now I think it's another name, Da Vinci or something. Then I went to went to Gady for 2 years, and then Burbank for 3 years.
Okay.
Graduated in '66 from Luther Burbank.
Right. How was school at Burbank?
It was good.
Yeah?
A lot of fun.
Were you in sports?
No, I was not. My family was not very well financially, so I got a job when I was 16 years old for a local pharmacy there. So I did a lot of working at the pharmacy to help my parents with finances. And it gave me money. And it taught me a lesson of, if you work hard, you will get somebody to pay you money. And that became a driving force in my life.
So it sounded like you did a lot of other things too. You were mowing lawns, you were waxing cars, you were working on boats.
Everything.
Anything you could.
Everything.
Yeah.
You needed your lawn mowed, I would do it. You needed me to babysit, I would do it. You need me to wax your boat, I would do it. Anything to bring money to me.
Right. I did those same sort of things. I remember babysitting for 50 cents an hour and, and mowing everybody's lawns.
Yep.
And then I got a SAC Union and a SAC B route. So yeah, same thing. You just needed a few bucks.
Well, like if I earned the money, I could spend it the way I wanted to.
Right. So entertainment in high school, what would you do when you had time when you weren't working?
Go to the movies downtown here. Go to football games. I was in Boy Scouts and Explorers, and I did a lot of camping with my dad and a lot of other stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
So I kept very busy.
Yeah.
High school went by quick.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you get out of high school, and not long after, you went into the Army.
I went to Sacramento City College for 2.5 years and had a stellar D+ average. I was more into partying than going to school, so the Army came knocking at my door. Somewhere in that period of time, I saw an ad in a magazine that said, "We teach high school kids to fly." And I went, So I looked into it, took the test, took the physical, got into flight school, went to basic flight school, and then graduated.
So you went to basic training at Fort Polk.
Fort Polk, Louisiana.
My dad said that was the worst fort he was ever at.
It's a pit. Yes, it is.
And he was at about 5 different forts, but he said that was by far the worst.
Well, I would have to agree with that.
Bad weather, lots of bugs.
Oh, and sand,
Yeah,
lots of sand.
yeah. That running in the sand is a lot of work. I remember those days.
When I was in basic, we would go to the range, we would march to the range in a downpour. It was just muddy, you know, the firing positions were covered in mud and so water, so, yeah. It was,
And then you had to have a clean uniform the next day.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I've never been back to Fort Polk, so,
Now, did you go to advanced training there?
no. So once I left basic training, which was my 8 weeks,
Right.
I was put on a bus with a bunch of other kids that were going, and we drove from Fort Polk, Louisiana to Fort Walters, Texas.
Oh,
And we got there and they put us into flight school that day. So I graduated on a Saturday, drove to Fort Walters. Sunday morning, I started flight school.
oh wow. And what was the total length of flight school?
Total length is 36 weeks, and it's broken up into individual increments.
Uh-huh.
And so at Fort Walters was a 20-week segment.
Okay.
4 weeks of pre-flight, 8 weeks of beginning training, and then additional 8 weeks of advanced training, all in a helicopter.
Okay. And where in Texas is Fort Walters?
West of Fort Worth by about 40 miles, Weatherford, Mineral Wells are the
Okay.
two towns that are really close.
Okay, right, I got it. And then you're going to go to Fort Rucker.
Then I go to Fort Rucker,
Yeah, in Alabama.
Alabama.
And so
another great state.
Yeah. And how long is the training at Fort Rucker?
It's an additional 16 weeks.
Okay. And this is all advanced stuff.
It's the first 4 weeks is basic instrument flying. The second 4 weeks is advanced instrument flying. The third 4 weeks is learning how to fly the Huey. And then the fourth section is combat assaults, living in the field, just getting ready to go to Vietnam, and some cross countries.
Oh, okay. Now, our family had a very good friend who was a longtime pilot, flew jets, flew props, his own planes. And then he got into helicopter training, and they finally put him on his own. He crashed and was killed. Now, I just think that given all that flight training he had, helicopters have to be very difficult to fly compared to regular airplanes.
Yes, I had done some fixed wing flying prior to going into the Army, so
Oh.
I had some air sense. But when you get in to fly a helicopter, you're using both feet, both hands, all at the same time, and various attitudes with the aircraft. So it's a very complicated, at first for me, to learn how to fly. But once you learn how to fly, it's like driving a car. You know, I know, you know, and so at first it was tough, but it got easier as we went along.
Wow. I guess you have to be pretty coordinated to fly helicopters.
Yes. It's not easy.
So once you finished what, 20 weeks at Walters, and then another
16 weeks.
16 weeks at Rucker, and then are you sent to Vietnam?
So at the end of the school, we're given our bar, we're given our wings, you're given 30 days off, and then my orders are Vietnam.
Okay. So 30 days leave, and then you go.
Yep.
And where did you land in Vietnam?
Landed at, believe it, it's either Benoit or Tonson. We ended up at
Yeah.
3 Corps.
Right.
And then we are sent to a replacement center called 90th Replacement,
Uh-huh.
where everybody coming into country or everybody leaving country goes to. And then they look at your profile and say, okay, he's a helicopter pilot. Who needs helicopter pilots?
Right.
Okay, this guy, this unit, this unit. So
And that's in 3 Corps.
it's in 3 Corps, just outside of Long Binh,
Yeah.
which is northeast of Saigon.
So you're going to get sent where?
I get sent to the 195th Assault Helicopter Company out of Plantation Army Airfield,
Where is that?
right next to Long Bend.
Oh, okay.
It's really close. It's right in there.
Yeah. Now, are you going to fly operations just in 3 Corps, or are you going to go outside there?
I don't know how far I can go with this. So the unit that I was assigned to, the 195th, we were the only unit in Vietnam with camouflaged Hueys. Our aircraft were painted by the Air Force. We had a SOG mission, Special Operations Group. We had a detachment of our unit at a place called Quan Noi, which is right on the border, up near Long Binh and An Loc. And we would run 5-man teams, 2 Americans, 3 Chu Hois, cross-border interdiction missions. And what they would do is that we would put the individuals on the ground, and all they would do is observe. We would stand off in case that team got in contact, and then we'd go in and get them. They did this in 3 Corps, they did this in 2 Corps, and they did some of it in I Corps. Various units had this SOG mission. And so I went up there for a while, did a couple of inserts and a couple of exfils. Then the SOG mission was starting to shut down. This was late 70. So I came back to Plantation and became just a line pilot for the unit as all those individuals slowly shut down and started to come south to our unit.
And for each of those 2 different jobs, what were you flying?
Just the UH-1H.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for 5 months, you were flying Cobras.
The unit, the 195th, stood down,
Uh-huh.
totally stood down and went home. So I went to the commander and begged to go home, and he said, "No, son, you're going to go to another unit." And I said, "Okay, sir." So myself and another individual from the 195th were assigned to the 1st Cav Division.
Okay.
We got to the 1st Cav Division, we were assigned to C Troop, 1st to the 9th Cav. And I was a line pilot, obviously as Huey pilot, so I got a check ride from the unit IP, instructor pilot, and I was placed in what they called the lift platoon. That unit had 3 distinct missions. They had a lift platoon for a platoon of grunts. They had a Cobra unit, which covered the little birds on a hunter-killer mission. So if something happened to one of those aircraft, the lift platoon would be launched with a platoon of grunts to go secure the area until things could be either removed or quelched.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So sitting at a bar one night, the platoon leader came in, and 2 of my buddies who I was drinking with said, "Hey, look, we're looking for front seat Cobra pilots." And the captain says, "Okay." And they go, "We want him," pointing to me, and I'm going, "I don't fly Cobras." And they said, "You can fly the front seat. You've got enough experience, you've got enough time in country, you know how to run the radios, you can do the missions." And so the captain said, "Go for it." So for 5 months, I teamed up with another pilot by the name of Randy Zahn, and he and I flew 5 months in country Cobra missions almost every day.
Oh, wow.
And we covered little birds. And the guy in the front seat, me, ran pretty much the radios and the map and kept watch on the little bird down there as he was flying around above the trees. And if anything happened to him, then it was my responsibility to launch the assets, cover the aircraft that was down, coordinate anything that needed to be done. So that was my job.
Okay. Did you take a lot of rounds over those whole 900 plus hours of combat time?
One instance comes to mind where we were flying over this little bird, almost on the border, but not quite into Cambodia. And I got a call from the fire support base that was just adjacent to us. And the guy comes over the radio and he says, "Are you shooting?" And we said, "No, we're not shooting." He said, "If you're not shooting, then somebody is shooting at you." And we went, uh-oh. So as I'm watching the little bird out my left wing, he comes across an area of vegetation comes across, and it was a V shape in the vegetation, so it was a little, he comes across and there was a 50 cal there and shot him down. Right, I'm watching him go down.
Wow.
And so then everything just breaks loose. So Randy's doing his stuff, was shooting, and I'm getting on the radio, down bird, and what happened was the people on the gun, when we started shooting at them, they left. They ran. They went back into the jungle, back into Cambodia. And then I coordinated bringing in our birds, our lift birds, to put people on the ground, get our pilots, crew chiefs, and observers out. Everybody was wounded. Nobody was killed. Got them out, secured the aircrafts, and then we eventually pulled everybody out. I think they ended up bombing the airplane or pulling it out the next day. I'm not sure.
And the Cobras, they were armed with what?
Our particular bird on the left inboard store was a 20 millimeter cannon, a Vulcan style cannon. The nose had a minigun, 7.62 minigun, 6,000 rounds per minute. And then the outboard stores had 7 rockets, 2.75 HE rounds. And then I think on the right inboard store, we had a rocket pod of 19 2.75 HE rockets.
Okay. And what rate of fire did the 20 millimeter fire at?
400 to 600 rounds a minute, and it was devastating.
Bad.
Yeah, if we found a bunker complex, it would tear up a bunker complex.
Did you ever come back with bullet holes in your aircraft?
I never took a hit while I was there.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. I mean, with all the stuff that I saw and all the stuff that I did,
Yeah.
I mean, they shot at us all the time.
Right.
I never took a hit on the aircraft.
Do you think you were more vulnerable in a Cobra versus a regular Huey, or what?
In a regular Huey, I never went looking for a fight. In a Cobra, I went looking for a fight.
Right.
So I was, but I could shoot back.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
they could do whatever they wanted.
Did you ever fly slick?
Slick.
No guns, just
No. Everything.
Pull out
We went
people.
out armed every day
Yeah.
to the teeth.
Okay. You went into Cambodia. It's okay to say it.
Yeah.
So what was that all about?
One incident that I remember, I was flying with the 195th, and I was up at Quan Loy, and I knew we were going in and out of Cambodia, putting in these 5-man teams. And we had built a small officers club, and so I'm sitting in the officers club picking up my mail, and I'm reading my mail, and I'm watching the TV, and Richard Nixon says, "We have no combat troops in Cambodia."
Huh.
And I went, I can't say what I want to say, but then I knew that the politicians were lying to the American people.
Right.
Because I'd been in there the day before. And so it was really a shock to me that I was a young kid. I was only 21 years old. I had never paid any attention to politics, never had looked at politics, and now this was coming full force. And here I was in Vietnam watching my president.
But you guys had actual soldiers on the ground in Cambodia.
We had teams on the ground,
Yeah.
usually 1 team or 2 teams at a time in our particular area. Again, there were 5-man teams. They were there simply to observe, but they got in contact a lot. It was special forces run out of Quan Loy.
Right. Yes. Several of the guys that were in my officer candidate class went into special forces, and 2 of them went into SOG. So they were doing some of those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a crazy world.
So anything more about Vietnam that you wanted to say?
One of the things, I went back to my company commander and I said, can I get a transition to a Cobra? And he said, well, I'm going to have to extend you for 6 months. And I said, sir, I want to go home.
Well, that was a smart decision.
So back to the 1st Cab Division, we had what was his name? Peppy Dukes. Is that him? He was our XO. And he came to a bunch of us in the officers club, and he handed us paperwork, and he said, we're going to give you a dream sheet, what you want to do when you leave Vietnam. I said, not a problem, sir. So I put in for, instructor pilot course, fixed wing course. I mean, I was just reaching for the moon. And all of us were. We didn't know what we were going to do, because once I left Vietnam, after a year as a warrant officer, I had two more years of service that I had signed up for. So I figured I'm going to go to Europe, I'm going to go to Korea. I didn't know where I was going to go. He came in about 2 or 3 weeks later and he goes, "Here's your package." I said, "Where am I going?" He said, "Well, open it up and find out." At that particular time, when I left Vietnam, which was March of '71, if you were a warrant officer and you wished to leave the Army, you had that option. So he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm out. I'm done. I'm out." So he got a little upset about that, because he wanted me to stay in the Army and make it a career. And I wanted to go back to school and get back to the United States. So once I left Vietnam, I out-processed through Oakland Army Terminal, and I left the Army after 25 months of a 48-month enlistment. So I got an early out.
Okay. But did you stay in the Reserve or National Guard, or?
The Army, because I hadn't finished my 6-year commitment, put me into a ready reserve outfit,
Okay.
and I would get stuff in the mail all the time. You got another few more points or all this other stuff. I never went to drill. I never followed up on any of it. I just, okay, I got another, whatever it was. So then I got out in March and April, went back to school in September, started my college career all over again. 4 years later, I graduated. I worked a year trying to get into the department, came on the Sacramento Police Department in '76. My partner at that time was flying for the California Army National Guard out at Mather, talked me into going back in. So about '78, I went back into the California Army National Guard to fly Hueys again in a medevac unit, and stayed there until 2004.
Okay.
So
But you never were sent overseas?
I was.
Oh.
In 2002, I volunteered to go back on active duty as a Black Hawk medevac pilot, and I went to Kuwait, and then we went into Iraq during the 2003 invasion that President Bush set up to remove Saddam Hussein from power.
Right. And you were there how long?
I got there in February, and I left there in probably July. That unit was slated to come out, reorganize, and then go back. My orders were from January 1st to December 31st. So when I came out, the old man, the boss, said, "You've done good, you can now leave." And so I got a little bit of an early out there also. So after I came back from Iraq, I stayed in Texas for about a month, out processed, and then was released from active duty, and I went back in the Guard.
Okay. But you weren't sent on any missions in the Guard after that, though?
No, nothing after that.
I got you.
So at the end of 2004, I decided I'm done. I've been here since 1969. I think I've given back my portion. It's time to go.
So you're back in Sacramento, you're going to school, you're working part-time, and you're working where?
Back at Anderson Brothers.
Okay. I know that pharmacy.
Yes. So my boss at that time started out as my neighbor across the street. That's how I kind of got the job. So I walked in, and he said, "You want your job back?" I said, "If I could." The agreement between he and I was, you sign up for school, I'll work your work assignments around you going to school.
It's a good deal.
I said, that sounds fair to me. So I'd let my hair grow long. I was kind of a quasi, the hippie thing going. And so he's talking to me, and I said, "Boss," I said, "I'll get a haircut before I come back to work." And he goes, "Okay, fair enough." So I left. "When do you want me to start?" "Oh, okay." So I'm sitting at the house, kind of getting everything ready, you know, go back to work, get a haircut. His daughter calls me and says, "Hi, Brian." I said, "Hi, Diane. Dad needs you to come to work now." I said, "Diane, I haven't got a haircut." I said, "He'll keep you in the back. Don't worry about it." I'd worked for the Anderson Brothers for 5 years, and so when I came back, it was like stepping right back into the same job I'd always done. I said, "Are you sure?" And she goes, "Yeah." I said, "I'll be right there." So I started working, had with the long hair and all that other stuff, and finally I said, "Boss, I gotta go get a haircut." So I got a haircut, went back to school, but I went back to Anderson Brothers for an additional 4 years.
Okay.
So
Well, that was a good setup for you.
it allowed me to go to school on my schedule and not so much his schedule.
Right.
So
Nice.
it was.
So, as soon as you finished college, did you join the police department then?
No, I was putting in for the police department. It takes about a year and a half to get hired. I should have started a year earlier, but I didn't. So I quit the department and went to work with a friend of mine. I was doing upholstery work, building seats for vans at that time. Just keeping busy until I could get a job. So in September of '76, I got hired by the police department and went to work for them.
And you worked there for how many years?
26 years.
And you mostly were in patrol?
Always in patrol.
Okay.
The reason I stayed in patrol is because seniority meant everything to us. Seniority could get me my days off that I needed to get back into the guard and do stuff with the guard. So I had to have the days off. So if I went to detectives or I went to, say, somebody else, then I might lose my seniority slot.
Yeah.
So I stayed with the patrol to guarantee my days off.
So if you'd gone to vice or narcotics, that you would have lost.
Oh, I've been working nights, weekends,
Yeah.
who knows.
So what neighborhoods did you work in patrol?
Deep south.
Ah,
It was an area that I grew up in.
right.
I knew the people, I knew the area. My parents had moved out by that time, but I knew the area. So I would go to calls and I would be dealing with people that I had grown up with, adults, their kids, and so I could get a lot more done by knowing the people than by just have another cop come in and try to talk to people who didn't care.
Sure.
This was my neighborhood.
Were you working two-man cars or single cars or what?
At first I started as a two-man car,
Uh-huh.
and then all of a sudden we went from a 5/8 program to a 4/10, 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. Then we went to single-man cars. The captain came down and said, "We want him to be a training officer." For 3 to 4 years I trained officers. There's some politics involved here that I won't go into, but I couldn't get people fired that needed to be fired. So I said, "I'm done." So I went back to a single-man unit, worked a single-man unit for the rest of my career.
Any incidents that sort of stand out in that police career?
We could be here all day.
Yeah. I don't want you to say anything that can get you in trouble. So.
I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
Just trying to think of one that might be. It was a good job. I worked with good people.
Uh-huh.
And this is going to get me in trouble, so I'm just going to say it. I was more worried about the police administration than I was about the bad guys on the street.
Wow.
I would train a kid, then he would get promoted, and then he would come down with some new regulations, and I'd go to him and I said, "You did all that when you were working with me." "Yeah, well, we're not going to do that anymore." I said, "How are we going to get things done?" And actually, I had a couple of sergeants on the department while they were still on probation, and 2 of them said to me in confidence, "I wish I had not taken the sergeant's exam."
Jeez.
And I went, "Okay." So I loved working the streets. It's fun, it's exhilarating, it's scary at times. Other times you're bored to death, but I enjoyed it.
Kind of like being in the Army.
Kind of like being in here.
So, I see that Chief Kearns just died.
Yes,
Did you get along with him okay?
great chief.
Everybody talks very highly about him.
Chief Kenny hired me in '76. Kearns came into the chief's office in '78, I believe. He was a gruff old Marine. I mean, but you could talk to him. He was a chief's chief. He was a cop's chief. He was old school, and he did a lot for the department. I mean, there's a lot of things that he did that we didn't agree with, and I'm sure some of that stuff came out of City Hall. I can't remember any specifics, but he was a good guy. I enjoyed working for him.
After you quit the police department, what did you do to occupy your time?
Retirement is a great life, let me just tell you. For a year, I went to work for Harley Davidson up in Placerville, just part-time. Shipping and receiving is what I did. I went to work for Home Depot for a while. That was interesting. And then after that, I just said, you know, I've worked all my life. I've worked since I was 12 years old. I want to just not do anything anymore.
Right.
And so I've just been basically doing nothing, but very, very busy during retirement life.
Didn't someone tell me you were doing something up at Apple Hill?
No, not that I'm aware of. Lake Almanor.
Oh, okay.
My wife's father passed away, and so we scattered his ashes up at Lake Almanor, which is where his brothers scattered and all this other stuff. So we go up to Lake Almanor every year. Matter of fact, I'm leaving the end of this month to go up there for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So we go up there and spend a lot of time.
It's a big lake.
Beautiful. It's really low this year.
I have a friend who lives in Fall River Mills,
Oh,
so
okay.
I go up and see him sometimes there.
Yeah. We've snuck by Chuck Norris's house up in Chester.
Oh, really?
Looked at his house, and
Yeah.
apparently his wife's from there.
Okay.
But in 2014, no, 2013, I went to a military reunion in Texas, Sun City. Guys that I had flown with in Vietnam. We ended up buying a house there, and so we moved there part-time
Oh,
to Texas. And
Sun City's close to what city?
Georgetown, Texas.
Oh, that's close to Austin, isn't it?
Yes, it's similar, Stockton to Sacramento,
Yeah.
Austin to Georgetown, very similar in distances. It's an interesting state.
Yeah, they call Austin the liberal city of Texas.
It's Berkeley East.
Yeah, yeah. I had a friend who retired there. Anything else you'd like to add at all about anything?
I would like to personally welcome every Vietnam veteran home and say welcome home to those individuals, because we didn't get the welcome home in World War II, Korea, the first Gulf War.
Sure.
And those guys came home to, shall we say, not so pleasant circumstances.
That's for sure.
I'd just like to, thank everybody for their service, and God bless every veteran.
I remember walking through the Oakland airport in my uniform. Boy, did I get some hate stares. Yeah. Nobody spit on me, but it was close to it.
They told me when I left Vietnam, take a set of civilian clothes with you,
Yeah,
so you could change out of
right.
immediately.
I heard several guys were told that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you for coming in today. I want to thank you for your service.
Thank you.
You're an honorable man. Proud to know you.
It's good to know you. Good to meet you too.